welcome back to another episode of Demon Folklorist. Yep, that's me, I'm the Demon Folklorist, and we're opening up the year with a demon case. So today we're going to be talking about the Demon of Brownsville Road, a case from Pittsburgh that gained notoriety around 2011 with a book of the same title coming out in 2014. So based on what the book says about these people's experiences, I would say that this is actually a demonic case. So I actually really had trouble finishing this book. I didn't like the narrator. I found him to be really arrogant, and he would often challenge this entity and do really dangerous religious provocation. And this is something that's never recommended. Even by seasoned demonologists, they're like, no, don't do this, because they always react. Demons are very allergic to religious anything, really, like anything related to Christianity, right? If it had been a more powerful entity, I think this would have really hurt him and his family very badly. It's one of my personal pet peeves about working in demonology is that the public often thinks it's smarter than us, what we're telling them, and they do stupid shit, and then they get hurt, and it puts everyone in danger. So please don't do this. Do not challenge a demon because you think they're not going to do anything. You might get lucky and you might not. Now, with me, at least when I'm investigating a case, I like to start at the beginning. So why is this happening? Sometimes there isn't an answer, or the answer is very unclear. Some places have energetic ties to horrible tragedies that seem to call demonic entities to settle in, or perhaps a person was doing something horrible there that called them, which is called the law of attraction. Or a door was opened for them to come through with the law of invitation. Why demons manifest in people's lives varies, but generally falls into a few different categories. So already inhabited is one of them, meaning it was already living there, or perhaps it was sent, meaning that somebody was using very dark magic to send it to you to harm you or to take something from you. Demons, I must reiterate, cannot just get into people's lives. If they could, there'd be a lot more cases. People would have this happening all over the place. It takes really special circumstances. So that's why every single time I sort of look a lot deeper into a case, I try to exercise caution, because the things that people tend to think is happening is not always what's happening. This case is thought to have come about because a mother and 3 children were said to be murdered by Native Americans during the Northwest Indian War. The owner looked into it, and it appeared that graves were actually on the property. And it's also thought that there was a curse levied on the property by an immigrant laborer because he was jealous of the owner because he had feelings for the owner's wife. Then later, there was a doctor who performed abortions in the house. Now, the doctor definitely existed, and there were rumors about him performing abortions, but with the way folklore works, it's really hard to say if that's true. Same with the first 2 stories. There is no real historical evidence of either story being true. Even with the graves being found on the property, we do not know for sure, without exhuming them, that that's who they were, right? Folklore is not always accurate. You got to remember that the process of folklore and the way it develops is usually through hearsay, and people change the story each time. It is heavily implied, and not even implied, let's just say it. They outright say that the reason that this is happening is because of the doctor story, because this demon targets children specifically because of all the abortions that were performed. Now, demons are not known for attacking children. I mean, they do. They completely do, but it's usually like a tactic designed to break down one of the adults, because what's the worst way you could affect an adult, or a parent rather, is by attacking their child and them not being able to do anything about it. And I'm going to evaluate if there's any special attention paid to the children, because it seems like it worked on all of them at different times, and that's a little out of the norm. Usually it's the most psychologically vulnerable of the family that's targeted for oppression and then possession. Also, abortions themselves would not cause demonic activity. That's not how that works. Christian-led media often points fingers like that because they believe abortion is wrong. Whether you believe that or not, abortions have never had a correlation to other demonic cases. So no, it was most likely not because of the doctor. or at least not that aspect of it. Now, I could believe that maybe it was drawn to this place because of the misery of these women who were very desperate, and it was feeding on their anguish. Honestly, if abortions were the real cause, every single clinic that ever does them would be infested. Every single woman who's ever had one would have a demon in their lives. This is not feasible as a reason. So, you are allowed to believe what you want, but there is no correlation between any other case. So I really don't believe that this one demon is called by this one thing in this one instance. That is not how patterns work. That's not how the data shows. The previous owner had denied paranormal activity, and this can be for several reasons, like guilt or fear of legal repercussions from not telling them about the spiritual activity in the house. People tend to lie about this kind of activity because they want to get rid of the house. They don't want any questions asked because they're afraid that this thing might follow them, and they're hoping it's just because of the house, because the Cranmers tried to sell it too when this was happening. And then it didn't sell, and they backed down off of it because they don't really want to unleash this on other people. And it's like, yeah, I get that. You don't actually want this to happen to other people, but there is a point where I feel like people would do anything to get it to stop happening to them. And I can't remember if I've said anything about this on my podcast. I'm really terrible at self-promotion. But a reminder for everyone that my book, The Black Hours, Modern Demonic Experiences and Folklore, is out now. It's available on the Hear Us Scream store website and Amazon. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a review, I would really appreciate it. It's so hard to get a new book noticed on the algorithm. But it includes all the phenomena I'll be discussing here. If you're interested in that sort of thing, or you want more information on demonic behavior, or to classify maybe one of your experiences. So this story starts with the house going up for sale right around the time that Bob Cranmer would be able to afford it. He'd been mysteriously drawn to the house since he was a kid, and now suddenly it was his. Like, almost too good to be true. This caught my attention because this comes up in other narratives that, once again, too good to be true situation, usually involving property that suddenly becomes available right when someone's looking, and they usually feel really weirdly drawn to it, or like they're drawn to this part of the US and maybe they go there and they suddenly find this place and they're like, yes, this has been waiting for me. Usually these places are already infested, and the family is then not able to leave because of money. It's a trap that's being laid for them. And then also these things happen really slowly. Like, you might be sitting here wondering, how the fuck do you not notice that a demon's in your house? Right? So people do notice it. They just tell themselves that's not what they're feeling. So what almost always inevitably happens is they get to the property after buying it, or, even maybe when they're doing like a look-see to see if anything needs to be fixed, that sort of thing, and they feel it. They know something is wrong. They can't quantify it. They can just feel it. It's in their bones. And maybe some of the more psychically inclined children feel it, and they tell their parents, like, I don't like this house. Or maybe the wife turns to her husband and says it. You don't listen to it. You aren't going to indulge those feelings because that's silly. This is a perfect house. It's such an amazing deal, or whatever reason that people tell themselves. And then suddenly things start happening and they're imperceptible at first. Maybe things start moving around. Maybe you start hearing mysterious noises, but you're like, it's an old house. This is bound to happen, Or maybe if you even believe in the supernatural at first, you're like, oh, I just have a friendly little ghost. It's fine. I can deal with that, right? And then things escalate. And it takes some time for that kind of energy to manifest because demons don't exist here. If they existed on our plane, we'd see them all the time. So it takes time to punch a hole into our world and to be manifesting really horrible negative miracles, right? Our senses are telling us the whole time something's wrong, but people almost always don't believe their senses until they see it. That's when they're like, oh, okay, maybe something's wrong. Maybe something's in the house. And usually they don't land on demon either. That comes later when really horrible things start to happen. And then people eventually kind of stumble upon the answer that, oh, this is that thing that, nobody wants. With the rise of paranormal TV, I feel like people land there a lot quicker than they should than before the advent of paranormal TV, because paranormal TV has convinced people that, oh, these things are all over the place. Yeah, this could easily happen to you. And it's like, no, not really. Demon cases that are genuine are rare. First, one of the daughters told her parents she didn't like the place as a child. Neither did one of their younger children, Bobby. Something upset him when he first ever went into the house, and their parents, Bob and Lisa, also had this experience. They shook it off because no one wants to believe that the house they just bought is infested. Then came the feelings of being watched by someone or something. There was uneasiness at night. There were personality changes in Bobby as he continued to sleep in what they later identified was the focal room of the infestation. They called it the blue room. He eventually became very introverted, angry, rebellious, and even violent in his teenage years, and very erratic. It would kind of almost be like it wasn't him. There were odd electrical issues almost always present. There was a chain on a light bulb in, I think, their hall closet that never stayed where it was supposed to. Like, chains, they're supposed to hang down. It would like wrap itself around it or do figure eights or do weird stuff. There would be fixtures breaking all the time in the house. The furnace boiler cracked, which caused flooding in the basement. The TV stopped working. Computers went haywire. All sorts of stuff, really. And this is also very common. There's a lot of energy exchange in a demonically infested house. So it's drawing from anything it can to continue to scare the shit out of you. There were issues within Bob and Lisa's marriage. Suddenly they became cold and very angry towards each other. And the couple had actually moved into the blue room at this point in time, so it directly corresponds. Lisa began to feel as if the house was making her paralyzed and she was unable to function in the way she would normally. And yeah, once again, other kinds of electrical issues. All the lights would be on in the morning. Radios would turn themselves on. Heating costs had gone way up. A chair that kept moving itself back to the same place in front of the furnace as if, somebody was sitting there. The kids would hear somebody walking, and also they'd hear knocking on their bedrooms. I think on the walls. That was loud enough to wake them. In front of friends, there was pounding that happened on a closed door. The surrounding area, usually where these events would happen, would have an intense temperature drop right after, which, if you've been listening long enough, you know that that's a major marker that we look for, because a ghost may cause a cold spot. A demon will suck all the energy out of the room in order to do whatever horrible thing it's planning to do. Another time when the kids would have a friend over, they saw a misty black figure in the middle of the night because they had slept over, and they said it resembled the Grim Reaper. Like, if it was the Grim Reaper, it probably sounds like it was a hooded demon. And for whatever reason, when demons show up and they look like they're wearing a hood, they're usually more powerful. But this does not seem to be a hooded case. Hooded ones, for whatever reason, seem to have higher importance and heightened abilities, and I didn't find that to be true. I thought, honestly, that it was something that couldn't have been higher level, otherwise it would have caused a lot more damage. But there was rage present in the house. Anybody could kind of fly off the handle temper-wise at any time. There was discord stirred into the Cranmers' lives. There was also a stench of burning rubber and sulfur. Eventually, it gave way to also this body odor smell, but it was a habitual trick to announce its presence, and this happened like all the time. It was either that or there was a smell of amniotic fluid, so that was odd. But one thing that I really just hope people take away from this: do not try to push back this entity on your own. This is exactly what the husband did, and it is dangerous. Like religious provocation, because he did that too. Once it's there, it is now a danger to you, and you need professional spiritual help to get it out. Unfortunately, the entire book irritated me for that exact reason. It came off as very preachy, and also because this guy was putting everybody in danger because he felt he could beat this thing. He's just lucky that it wasn't powerful enough to truly fight back, because if it did, he could have been seriously hurt, or his children or his grandchildren could have been seriously hurt, and I need you to take that into account when you're reading books like this. But if it was something that was like as powerful as some of the other ones I've read about, there would have been rape involved. with members of the family. That has happened where usually teenagers and women, but also men, are targeted by something invisible, or having injuries that maybe never healed, having your vitality stolen from you and you never recover. There are horrible things that can happen, and you messing around with something like this will get you hurt. So please don't ever do religious provocation. Do not try to push it back on your own. And it's like, it happens anyway because I think people get very frustrated and they accidentally lash out because this thing is hurting their family. And I do understand that, but continually doing it, and maybe he was never told, you are not supposed to do that. Humans do not actually have any power over them. The only force that seems to have been cataloged and patterned is that if you invoke the name of God or Jesus, that tends to work. And this is not me like preaching at you about religion. Whether you believe in God or not, they do. Demons do. Although I gotta say, sometimes I'm getting really burnt out by the amount of Christian folk belief that people are accepting as bold-faced fact. That demons are everywhere and that they're getting inside people, and that's why people on the internet don't agree with you. You should have seen some of the stuff I saw on Christmas of people just going on and on and on about the evil of paganism in relation to Christmas and all that stuff. And people were like, oh, well, the demons made you say that. I'm like, I'm sorry, the what? No. Like, demons aren't even close to being as abundant as people seem to think they are. And yet, here we are. People are sitting here believing that. And it could even be because their pastor is saying things like that. And they're like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. The pastor thinks that because he's well read. He knows what he's talking about. I'm here to tell you that's not true. No, they're not very abundant. And anybody who says that does not work in demonology. I can guarantee it. Anyway, sorry, this book kind of made me a bit livid. There was also this Father Ron, in there who gave some of the weirdest advice throughout the book, and like the husband just ate it up. This guy just really annoyed me, this father. But why are you telling this ordinary man to be pushing back a demon himself? I think on other spirits it works a lot better because you have more authority, but demons, no. That's not going to work. This father also told him that the reason the smells were getting stronger is because the spirit was experiencing dread and anxiety. Spirit phenomena getting stronger actually usually means that the demon has built up enough strength to make things worse. So I feel like he was feeding him false information a lot, and nothing irks me worse than inaccuracy. So something, as I was actually rereading my notes and getting them ready for this podcast, something that occurred to me is that the spirit of the doctor could actually still be in the house, and that maybe the demon latched itself to his spirit. Maybe this guy was a lot sicker and more fucked up than we understand. I mean, there was a Nazi medal found in the house, so possibly he was a Nazi. We know that a lot of them escaped to the US, or maybe he was a Nazi sympathizer. Either way, it's not good. And I think this guy might have been calling it to him. Also, the fact that the land seemingly was cursed, because they did find like a cursing kind of altar or whatever underneath the house. And the story goes that like an immigrant laborer like was either in love with, or he thought he was, or sexually obsessed with the owner's wife, who was very young and beautiful, and he cursed them because of that. And it's like, yeah, that's great. Thanks for that. But either way, it would kind of help push it through the door if the doctor was also doing really sick, twisted things against his humanity. There are things that are connected to the doctor specifically, like the chair in front of the wood stove. Supposedly, like, psychics told them that the doctor would sit there as he burned fetuses, and then the smell of the amniotic fluid. And this thing was feeding on the misery of the women, who are probably scared and upset about their circumstances. You got to remember, abortions were even more dangerous then. Not many people knew how to do them, and they went wrong. Like, people died. And apparently, the psychics also said that this guy wasn't super sanitary when he did them. So, there's a lot going on here. Also, that he was a drunk and he would get drunk before doing some of these procedures. He would treat the women horribly and very roughly. He didn't seem to care if there were issues with the actual surgery. Yeah, like if I had to guess, that's what I would guess is what was going on. That the reason these manifestations were happening is because the doctor's spirit was probably still in the house. And then reading this, there was some focus on the children as far as oppression, especially with the teens, and they both had suicidal ideation and really serious issues, but it didn't seem to focus on any of them for very long. Usually it was working on whoever was staying in the blue room, since that was the focal point of the infestation, but it didn't seem like possession was the true goal. There was like the dad and the son had gotten into a physical fight, and the way the son talks about it was Bobby. He was like, yeah, like it was super weird because we were having like a father-son day, everything was going well, and then suddenly we were at each other's throats. It does sound like there was a partial possession that might have happened there. As far as the light chain, also something that occurred to me is that maybe the portal of how this thing was entering our world was there, because right behind that they found the altar and the curse and all that. So it's entirely possible that the curse was the door and then the attraction was the doctor. So we've got like two things going on that would actually cause a demon to enter a space. And that the light bulb and the chain that was hanging off the light bulb, maybe it was being manipulated by the energy portal. So that's why it would get all twisted up or turn into figure eights or the weirdness that would happen. Also, this thing really delighted in the confusion and the strangeness of that continued light bulb event because it was something that they noticed immediately. It was something that made them go, something's wrong here, because that shouldn't be happening. There was no draft. There was nothing that would cause that kind of almost magnetic attraction with the light bulb like being twisted up around the light. But that's my best guess as to what's going on there. Another big thing that made me go, oh yeah, this is definitely a demon, was that it hated rosary beads and any other religious articles. That is something that we look for because it really affects demons negatively. They fucking hate anything that is religious. There was even like a time where a crucifix looked like it had been chewed on. It would mess with the rosaries by linking them together without breaking them, and this is something that happened continually. It had, it seems, a specific power of materialization and dematerialization. Like, it would slip chains that had crucifixes off of them, off of their heads, even though the chain was not small enough for that. It was found underneath somebody as they were sleeping, between the box spring and the mattress. There was also a materialized CD that suddenly materialized in midair and was thrown at Bobby's head. Luckily, it missed. My guess is it was designed to scare him rather than hurt him, because demons are actually pretty accurate. If you've read the Roland Doe case, once Ronnie was actually possessed, it would like spit with accuracy in priests' faces from across the room. So I just don't really believe that a demon's going to actually miss if they're going to throw something. But yeah, I think it was designed to scare him. I really don't think it was aiming for him. They were scratched and bitten. The walls bled. There were puddles of this blood-like substance, which they actually tested, and it wasn't blood. It was kind of like spores and like, I can't remember what else was in it, but it wasn't like a mold or anything like that. It was something that the demon had moved from somewhere else into this house, probably to make it look like blood, to scare them, because demons actually cannot create. They can move things around, they can manipulate energy, they can do all sorts of things, but they cannot create anything. There was a dark figure that was very interested in a sleeping grandchild, and it would often come and like sort of bend over the child while they were sleeping. This happened while the mother had her baby right next to her, and it's one of the daughters, Jessica, and her son, Colin, and she woke up to this thing's ghastly face, like bent over, grinning at her, and she couldn't move. And she remembered that this sleep paralysis had actually happened many times when she was a teen. And that is something that demons are said to do, to be able to paralyze you as you just wake up and you are watching it and you can't move. Now, is there crossover with like actual sleep paralysis where it's like not spirit related? Absolutely. But there's far too many instances where people just wake up and this thing is like leering at them and they can't move. So I think that sometimes our minds are caught in between sleep-wake cycles and we can't get up. I've had hypnagogic hallucinations. They're fucking weird. But I actually wasn't fully awake and it wasn't spirit caused. So, but it's like, where's the line? How do we tell the difference? And the difference is usually that you are awake when this happens. Although demons have said to be able to manipulate dreams. When because I'm unfortunately psychic, right now I'm on the end of, I do not feel special because this stuff sucks. So the way that I tell I'm being attacked is by my dreams getting very strange, sometimes like weirdly perverted, or just weird, and it starts to feel like my mind's being invaded as I sleep. So that's how I notice it. Is it different with demons? I think so. It's usually something that happens later, and it's a lot worse than some weird dreams. Maybe you start to wake up and you're not really rested anymore when you had always been rested, but they affect you mind, body, and soul. And body is especially affected. It is horrible to have a spirit honestly around you at all times because they're drawing energy from you. But when it's a demon, people start to change. Like their physicality starts to change. They feel old and decrepit because this thing's taking from them. They feel like their vitality's gone. They feel like they stop looking like they once did because this thing is taking your energy from you, and it is causing these issues that you start to have. Mysterious illnesses come up all the time where people who had never been ill a day in their life suddenly have like a whole host of problems just because they're in proximity to this entity. They are dangerous. Anyway, sorry, so many tangents. Whenever I talk about demons, I swear there's no linear focus. It's because there's so much random stuff that I'm trying to tell you that I happen to know about. But anyway, let's move on with the story. One thing that I do actually agree with is when they said that there are no quick fixes to this level of evil. That is correct. There aren't. An interesting trick that they did, the ashes of these fetuses were buried to produce, like, underneath this, like, rose bush, and they would produce these lovely pink roses, and suddenly they turn, like, a deep blood red, and it's like, well, that's a cool trick, I guess. It's just, there was a lot of emphasis throughout the book placed on the abortions, and no matter what you believe, that's not the cause, y'all. So, yeah, my biggest problem is inaccuracy. I have such a problem with people going around who are not demonologists, who do not work in this field, being like, oh yeah, it's totally this, just because it aligns with their beliefs. That is not how this works. And people need to realize that just because you believe that's a sin, that doesn't mean that that's what caused a demon. There have to be special circumstances. Anyway, sorry. It makes me livid that people walk around saying this, and then somebody picks up this book and they think, oh my gosh, yep, abortion, that's exactly what caused this. So yeah, it's just a problem. Like, there was just a lot of, like, again, weirdness that came up with the abortion. Sorry to mention it again, but there was this thing that they were like, it's the door of sorrows, and it was predictably from Father Ron, who I already don't like. Of all the women who had passed through this door after their abortions, they talked about how powerful this entity was. I don't think it was. It seemed to do the exact same things after a while, just really bad disturbances. And there was also this part where Father Ron told them to have a lot of sex. And I'm not actually joking about that it was because of the true love between a man and a woman that pushed back its evil. And I'm just like, I would never tell somebody to do that. I think it's weird, and I think this man is weird. Maybe it is true that love in one of its most primal forms can push evil back, but it's not something I'd recommend because it leaves you very vulnerable. You're not paying attention, first of all, and you're naked. So, no, I wouldn't tell you to do that. Ever. But, okay, whatever. Who knows? Maybe it's just a facet of demonology I haven't come across, but no demonologist I know would ever tell you to do that. And this guy, he never actually walked in the house. He was like a psychic, and he would call every now and then and just give these random tidbits of information he somehow divined. And I didn't like him or his advice, and most of the time felt that it was incorrect. They also brought in Penn State Paranormal, which was run, and I don't know, maybe it still is, I have no idea, by this guy from Paranormal State, who I know quite a bit about because I knew somebody who worked with him, and he may or may not have been horrible. I don't want to be sued by this guy, but he also may or may not have stole money from his fans and faked cancer to cover up substance abuse issues. Look it up. It's all on the internet. I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. But apparently they kind of stopped using them because they didn't really help, although they did document the phenomena, and that caused the Catholic Church to get involved so they could get an exorcist in there. So some good. They also at one point assumed that this was like a Canaanite god, Moloch, who they used to sacrifice children to. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch. It literally doesn't even matter like why they thought that. I think it was something based on what the demon actually said to them during an EVP. It's like, dude, these things are liars. You cannot take anything they say. And of course, a demon, let's just say like this is like a lower level demon and Moloch is like a big level demon. Of course, it's going to tell you that's what it is. It's trying to cause fear and apprehension and, like trying to get you to fold. Like, so no, you can't listen to what they're saying. They are huge liars all the time. That's all they do. There were also some really very irritating opinions that were given by the paranormal group that came in, like that school shootings are totally caused by demons. No, they're not. You know why? Very few cases ever are featuring demons that actually killed somebody while they were possessing someone else. I've only ever found 5 where that person was very clearly possessed during the murder. If it was really that prevalent, it would happen more, and that's the truth. Because yeah, there have been plenty of possessions. Very, very few people have ever actually been murdered by somebody who was possessed. Now, this implies that not all demons have the ability to commit murder while occupying a body. Second, humans are evil too. And taking away their agency and their accountability and ignoring that people are also mentally ill and evil and capable of horrible acts against other people, this is horrific. Why are you doing that? Why are you shifting blame? It's a societal issue. Like, most people don't have access to health care where they can get their mental health checked out and the meds that they need and the help that they need. So shifting blame shifts where the actual problem is, which is that, our government doesn't actually provide those things for its people. And also we don't have strict enough gun laws. So they wonder why these people are doing this, and it's like, oh, of course it's demons. It's not the fact that gun laws aren't strict enough or that people are mentally ill, and that people are also evil. People do horrible things, and they don't need demons' help to do them. So I really hate these opinions, and I hate that people in paranormal groups that feel comfortable espousing these ridiculous points of view when it's like, are you a demonologist? Because I bet you aren't. Sorry, this stuff, it makes me livid. There was also this opinion that the Nazis, of course it had to be demons, just because you don't understand that level of evil and the level of ignorance and just able to look the other way because it's not you being carted off to these gas chambers in train cars. Again, people are evil too. They are capable of great acts of evil against their fellow man. And saying like, oh, well, of course it was caused by demons, it takes away the agency of every single man, woman, and child who benefited from the Nazi Party or from people who benefited from their protection. They did have ties to the occult. Nazis did, but at the end of the day, I think humans make the decision to pull the trigger or to act on cruel impulses or to act on the things. Like, even if you were demonically possessed or had something around you, it is your choice to act on it. We have that free will. Nobody can take that away from us. It takes a lot to actually break down a body to get inside of it spiritually, to control it. And the person's will gets regained eventually and they spit them back out. You need to realize that demons are not at the root of all evil in the world. Just don't make me tap the sign. Because if I had a sign, it would be like, people are evil too. And then it would go into like an entire rant like I just did. Also, for fuck's sake, please do not talk to demons. Like, please don't, if they're talking to you, don't talk back. What are you doing? They're talking in your head, don't talk back. You have to shut that door. Because nothing they're going to say to you, nothing you're going to say to it is actually going to help. And the husband also did this a lot. And it's like, you need to stop. And why did nobody tell you to stop? Or if they did, why are you ignoring them? You don't know what you're doing. The demon also moved from one house to another, which is interesting, to torment the daughter's family. And the activity at the primary house actually stopped for a time, and then it moved back in. So it seems like they can only focus their energy in one place at a time if it's only one demon. If it was multiple, I'm sure they could have done things at the same time if there were multiple. I don't think there were multiple. If you look at the Doe case as well, It was not very powerful at first. It was not something that I feel could have done what ended up happening. I think at some point in time, another demon came in, something much more powerful, and ended up helping that along. It's because the phenomena changed and it became suddenly very different, more than what was originally happening, which had patterns that would like repeat. That's all that it did, and it didn't really progress. But I think whatever ultimately possessed him was very powerful, and it was called at some point to come in and kind of take over. So that's what I think about that case, just based on everything that I know about it. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Me talk shit about everybody in this case. And it's not that I don't have real empathy for these people. It's that there were a lot of mistakes and things that I think could have been avoided. And I didn't think that this demon was particularly powerful. So, yeah, I have such problems with inaccuracy. But if you've been listening long enough, you know that. There's a lot of things out in the world that people don't realize is not actually fact in demonology. And basically, it leaves me, the only demon folklorist, and then demonologists to unravel that. Because people are essentially freaking themselves out more than demons are already scary. And that's not helping anyone. Next episode is actually TBD because I need to figure out exactly what I want to do. It's either going to be a horror movie one or a mythology one, but we shall see, won't we? Thanks for listening, guys. Love you all, demon folk, for listening to my craziness. And yeah, I'll see you later. Have a demon-free day, all right?